Hey, here's the next episode of the Indefinite series, How to Have Fun in Destiny. I'm going to show you a build for Destiny PvP, which hopefully adds some freshness to your experience and invites you to try something unique, and then you're going to try the build out and maybe you'll like it, and maybe you won't, but that's okay. The builds in this series balance competitiveness with weirdness because I like nestling right between trying and chilling, and I think you might too. For today's episode, we'll be pairing Tommy's matchbook with a really fun Devour build on Warlock with secant filaments. Like most of my fun build recommendations, the point here is not complexity or potency, but rather finding joy in the small things. This build is no different. Pairing secant filaments with Tommy's matchbook is nothing new, it's just a silly and fun thing to do because Tommy's hurts you over time as you fire but increases damage, and then secant filaments is just one more way to activate Devour and get all your health back, so they kind of cancel each other out and then just end up giving you extra damage and invite you to go on a streak. Altogether, it lets you have a lot of fun and you learn how to juggle the Devour buff, which is a timelessly enjoyable part of Warlock culture. Also, I personally really like how secant filaments looks, which matters to me a lot for a build, but that aside, it really is fun to pair secants with a semi-long range weapon and get some Devour streaks going. I've particularly enjoyed this build in things like Control and Iron Banner's Eruption game mode, but you can play this thing just about anywhere. I've even seen secant filaments used in Trials before, and it was a legitimately really good choice in there. Anyway, today we're just goofing around in 6v6 modes with this one, but before I keep gushing about this build, I should show it to you in a little more detail, so let's go live to the studio and I'll walk you through it. So for this build, I just did the classic, double targeting, charge with light setup. Here's a loader, more charge with light stuff, double unflinching, quick charge to get that shotty out faster, and then double utility kickstart and 100 recuv just to get the riffs up as fast as possible. I don't really think any of the other stats matter too much, although I did try like 80 mobility and sometimes 100 mobility, which is quite fun for the dueling with Tommy's. But I think what's more important than that is to have really high resilience because you want to be dueling more at that low health area and still have more health points left. Here's the subclass setup. I think Nova Bomb is probably the best choice, but do whatever you want. Empowering Rift, obviously you need that. You have to run Blink, it's mandatory. And then obviously you need Devour. That's the whole point of this. And I chose Chaos Accelerant because I think it's just better for the kind of getting void ability kills thing, but you do you. I like to pair it with Magnetic Grenade and get that handheld Supernova thing going. What you can also do is chuck the Magnetic Grenade and the melee at your opponent at the same time, and then that's often a kill, which is good. The only downside with this being that they can actually hit each other mid-air and explode mid-air, not on your enemy. What you have to do is like throw one to the left 10 degrees, one to the right 10 degrees, like of your enemy in the middle, and then they'll kind of both track to the middle and hit your enemy. And that's one thing you can do, which often works, but I just kind of like the handheld Supernova. Obviously, Echo of Starvation is quite good for picking up those orbs and getting Devour. Making Devour last longer is very important, I'd say. And then I just chose Leeching because resilience being higher is always a good thing, and getting health regen starting on your melee final blow kind of feels like the original Devour, which I quite like. And I guess here's the heritage roll that I have. Really wish it had hipfire grip and moving target, but that's okay. It's all right. Get the Tommy's Catalyst, it's worth it, and then Eager Edge just for fun. Alright, that's the works. For the playstyle of this build, it's all about taking calculated risks to get the big payoffs of an exciting Devour moment. The beauty of secant filaments is that you don't have to wait for a void ability kill to activate Devour, and you don't have to wait until there's an orb on the ground to pick up to activate Devour. You can just drop your Empowering Rift and get a really long timer rolling on Devour right away, at no cost to you. Basically, as soon as I spawn in, I just get close to the action, drop my Empowering Rift, and then I leave it almost immediately and just go searching for kills. Usually before I peek a lane, I'll charge up Tommy's matchbook a bit before I turn the corner, so then about halfway through a duel with someone, I'll hit the overheated stage, which will boost damage with Tommy's, and they'll suddenly just melt. If there's a second opponent near me, I'll probably start hip firing at this point so Tommy's doesn't damage me as much, since that's actually part of the exotic perk if you look at it, which makes dueling really fun because you can hip fire and strafe really fast. It's kind of like Last Word vibes, but with an auto rifle and not as overpowered. Now, to be fair, the time to kill of an auto rifle is not really stunningly fast or unexpected like a 3-tap from a hand cannon, where you might not always realize you're about to die until your opponent is already one shot away from killing you. With a hand cannon, you can catch some players off guard because it's just 3 shots to kill, so it's 3 chunks on their health bar and they're done. So I think of it as like 3 warnings that they're getting damaged before they're going to do anything. And that's not a lot of warnings, but with an auto rifle, their health bar drains more slowly, so opponents are much more likely to realize they're losing a duel halfway through it, have time to react, and decide to bow out. And sometimes they can get away with this when you just have a puny auto rifle. However, if your overheated perk from Tommy's activates halfway through a duel, I found it's much easier to catch someone by surprise with that TTK of the overheated Tommy's, and suddenly they're just incinerated by the matchbook, and it's great. Anyway, if you get a kill while your Devour from the Secant Filaments rift is active, that's awesome, just keep it rolling. But if not, the cool thing is that because your Devour timer is so long with this build, when you drop your Secant Filaments rift, you can easily run away, get your health back, and then peek again and still have that same instance of Devour going, which most people do not really expect. So that's one way to do it, but what you can also do is get someone weak and maybe you get damaged more than them, and then when they chase you, you should just toss your void melee thing around the corner, which will easily track them, or throw your grenade at them, and either way you'll probably get a void ability kill with one of those two, which can activate Devour as well. Or honestly, in 6v6 modes, which is where this build shines, there are often so many orbs on the ground, it'll be pretty likely that you can grab an orb and start off Devour that way. Or if you wanted to, you could take this build further and use weakening grenades, and then if you get a precision kill on a weakened target, it can drop an orb, and then you can pick up that orb and get Devour that way too. But if you don't want to do all that, if you're playing any 6v6 mode, particularly Eruption and Iron Banner, you're probably going to get your super back pretty fast, and that's just one more way to activate Devour, since your super, whether that's a Nova Bomb or Nova Warp, is a void ability kill, so that's going to activate Devour. Point being, you have a lot of Devour activation options as a Warlock with this build, so go wild, girl. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when you activate your Secant Filaments rift, the Devour buff starts then. It doesn't just like stack it up for you, unless they change this in a future patch of course, but as of now you can't just extend Devour by activating your Secant rift, you can only start it by activating your Secant Filaments rift. So if you're only a few seconds away from losing Devour, don't activate your rift because it won't do anything and you'll just lose Devour. You're not going to get any more time at it. Instead, if you want to play it safe, rather than re-peeking an enemy or throwing your rift, if you can just wait a few seconds and then pop your rift, then you get to start off again at the top of the timer and give yourself a lot more wiggle room. But of course, you'll have to make the call for yourself, and maybe it is worth pushing in those last 3 seconds of Devour because you don't need some YouTuber to tell you to play it safe like a loser. Okay, anyway, for the game modes of this build, I don't know what you enjoy, but I really do not care about the outcome of 6v6 mode, so I kind of just ignore the score and everything and just get aggressive as possible with this build, and that's how I have fun with it. I just think it's really boring to try to play to win in 6v6 modes. Like in my book, just going for kills and clips is easily the most rewarding way to play these chaotic game modes, and especially builds like this. And I think the beauty of this build is that it lends itself so well to just that. Chaos and pressure and excitement. Like when you get the Eruption timer going and the Devour timer going, it's a lot of pressure and it's pretty exciting because you just have to ape with your silly little auto rifle, and it's a great time. It really encourages and rewards you to go on streaks, and I just really love that. I'd say probably one of the more challenging things you're going to have to do with this one to get good at it is tracing aim, because Tommy's is not like that forgiving compared to something like a hand cannon or a sidearm or an SMG, but Tommy's has some nice range I was not expecting, and honestly the real dream here is just holding down the trigger and never letting it go as you just chew through opponents and get your health refreshed on every kill. It is such an exciting proposition in a 6v6 mode to essentially be playing momentum control while everyone else is playing normal control, and that's my most favorite part of it. Just the extremely enticing promise of like, pop off, show us what you can do, here are all the tools to go on an epic streak, and all you gotta do is point and shoot. Once you can crack this nut of learning how to hit shots, juggle Devour, and outstrafe some fools, I think you're gonna get some awesome clips. Okay, I hope you try this build out because I think you'll have fun with it and it might give you a fresh way to enjoy PvP, and if you don't, that's cool too. Like all my PvP fun build videos, it's inevitable there will be plenty of ways to iterate on this one over time, so if you have any other suggestions, feel free to drop them in the comments and help inspire other folks. Okay, thank you so much to my patrons for tempting me to do this hobby full time, and you should sub so you don't miss the next episode of Fun Builds. Speaking of which, if you like Devour, you should definitely try out this awesome double sidearm Mechaneer's Trick Sleeves Devour build that I picked up from Cami Cakes, where you basically just get Devour and a Forerunner and you can 2-tap in PvP. It's super good and it's linked on screen or in the pinned comment. Cheers and catch you in the next one.